Remember, in the course of discussing movies, the host will spoil plots. You've been warned. Listen to their screams. Greetings, ghouls and creeps, and welcome to Listen to Their Screams, a horror podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dave. I'm joined by the other host, Ike. Ike, how are you?
I am doing spooktastic.
Me too. I'm glad everybody's here and listening. I'm ready to talk horror movies. Before we dive into everything, and our review today is on the theatrical release, The Exorcist Believer. I'd like to send a thank you to our wives, Monica and Kayla, for all their support and help. Even despite, I'm going to take the high road, even despite the wives' rebuttal last week, I'm going to take the high road and still thank them for their support. But this support feels like it's dwindling every time they come on the show, but so be it. But like I said, we're going to be reviewing The Exorcist Believer, but we've got a lot of stuff to talk about and discuss before we get there. And we even have a couple of movies that we're not really doing full reviews on, but a couple of weekend releases that we both watched that I think we ought to just chat about a little bit because, man, they were really good. And I'm really excited about them. But let's start. We both watched VHS 85 that came out. We've talked about these VHS movies quite a bit through the course of the podcast. I've talked about how they've turned me around on found footage. And I have said that each one seems to get better than the one before. And I think that trend continues. I think VHS 85 is my favorite thus far. And man, I absolutely loved it and fully enjoyed it. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. VHS 85, in my opinion, I don't want to say. I honestly, my initial reaction was that this was the best one so far. And the only reason I do stick with that is because this one kind of did a little something different than the other ones, where it has sort of like that background story that was kind of going on about the shapeshifter creature, Rory. Mm-hmm. So it kind of was in the background the entire time, but also some of the segments crisscrossed across with each other.
Yeah.
And fun fact, one of the segments, which was probably my favorite one out of all of them, which was called Dream Kill, which was directed by Scott Derrickson. Fun fact, it's actually in the same universe as Black Phone.
Interesting.
It's a it's a part of the universe. For a little spoiler here, one of the character in Dream Kill, which is one of the segments, can see the future. He can see premonitions of deaths that are occurring. His aunt is actually the mom of the two younger characters in Black Phone. So it's a hereditary thing, I guess, where everyone has the ability to see the future in that family.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, that was a good segment. I like that one, but I really liked the one at the lake with the people that had been in the water couldn't die, and which tied, like you said, to the other one about the group, what they call themselves, the Seven, I think it was, and come to find out that tied to that was a member of the set. Again, this is spoiler, which we say right at the top of the show, so if you've not seen it, we're going there. That the one girl in the Seven who was doing her, whatever you want to call it, her coming of age thing, was the sniper in the first segment at the lake that was shooting them. So it was pretty cool, and it all swung back around. I loved how that tied together. I didn't see that coming, right? I really liked the lake segment, and then when it got to the Seven, I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. And then, when it got to the point and she put that video in, I was like, oh, this is tying back, and I was very impressed. It was very cool. I fully enjoyed it. Really, really loved it.
Yeah.
But even despite that, while as much as I love VHS 85, I don't think that I enjoyed it even as much as another movie that I watched, which was, you mentioned to me, which I was already planning to watch, but that everybody's talking about, and that is on Amazon Prime. It is Totally Killer.
Yep.
This movie freaking knocked it out of the park. This movie was incredible. And, to me, it was clever. It was funny without feeling forced, because sometimes humor just feels so forced and cliche. But this didn't have that. And this movie really gave me vibes, just feel wise. I'm not saying it's as good as or the same type of movie per se. Just the feeling of it, really, in the freshness of it, I guess, kind of gave me vibes of Scream.
Yeah.
It really felt very clever, and tied in humor well and was very hip. I thought, and this is one of those movies that I watched it and I told Monica, say, oh, you would like this movie, watch it. And she liked it and she loved it. And, man, this was a great movie. And, I am dying and hoping so much that they do another one, that they continue on. But I know like online world is on fire talking about this movie. But I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to add. So, well, first of all, like you said, I mentioned it to you, and you kind of I figured you probably already had it on your list for the weekend because holy shit, so much stuff came out this weekend. But in addition to kind of what you said, my wife Kayla actually recommended this movie, and I was very hesitant going into it just because it kind of seemed cheesy.
Yeah.
But in watching this movie, first of all, Kiernan Shipka is fantastic in horror movies. She also plays a role in Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I think she is Sabrina in the Netflix series, which I've heard is great. But this movie, like you said, it had meta slasher vibes on par with Scream. It gave me if I had to describe this to somebody, I would tell them it has the vibes of Happy Death Day if you mixed it with Back to the Future. And it was, oh man, so good. I could do a whole review on just how great this movie is and how good of a twist this movie has, and just such a beautiful slasher. Just so good. So good.
Yeah, I loved it. And again, like I said, I knew this movie was coming. I had heard about it. I had read about it. I thought, I don't know. It's, it's supposed to, they kept calling it horror comedy, blah, blah, blah. And it is. Right. I get that. But I'm like, I don't know. This doesn't sound like my thing. But I thought, you know what? I'll try it, right? I almost feel like this obligation, right? And it's not that I didn't want to watch it, per se. But it's like I feel like I need to check it out, right? So we could talk about it and so that I can be informed. And I watched it. I thought, holy shit, that was great. And I don't know. I can't complain at all about the movie. I thought it had everything that a good movie has. And I won't we won't talk about it a whole lot because I'm hoping people are still watching it. Again, I think it's perfectly set up that they could do all kinds of things with it. I mean, there's endless sequel possibilities that they could do with this, given how the film ended, and there's all kinds of stuff. But tying into this, we like you said, this was a big weekend for horror movies. Lots of releases in theater. Well, I mean, obviously the Exorcist Believer in theater, and then online. Some kind of benchmark for the year releases. So we did throw up a poll on Twitter or X or whatever it's called. And we asked which weekend horror release did the fans enjoy the most. And we got a really, really good response on it. Lots of votes in. And it broke down. We had 4 choices, and it broke down that the winner was Totally Killer with 56%, overwhelmingly. And then at number 2 was VHS 85 with 26%. Third was The Exorcist Believer at 14%. And coming in fourth was Pet Sematary Bloodlines at 4%, which we will be reviewing next episode. And now it has me a little trepidatious. But I'm thinking the numbers don't reflect. I don't know. I've heard things about it, not favorable, but I think the numbers more reflect. I bet a lot of people have not watched it, given some of the other stuff. That's what I'm going to go with. And to be fair, and we'll talk more about it again, I've heard a lot of negative online about The Exorcist Believer. It's getting raked over the coals, and we'll talk more about this and our feelings on it, and then this online reaction to it and everything. So it's very peculiar, but we'll talk about more and when we get to our review. But besides those, like I said, we both watched those. Ike, did you watch anything else of note?
I actually I watched a lot of stuff. But basically, all of it was rewatches. Like, we rewatched the Goosebumps from 2015, Halloween Town from 1998, Hocus Pocus from 93, It Follows from 2014, and Trick or Treat from 2007. But 2 new-ish things that I watched that I think are worth noting. I watched the Spirit Halloween movie on Shudder from last year, and it was all right. It's definitely geared more towards like kids, I think. just because it wasn't super scary, and it was very cheesy, and yeah. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm not gonna give it a rating just because I would feel bad. But the other movie that I watched was a movie called Malum on
Hmm.
Stars. Malum is a remake of a movie that I've talked about before on here. It's called The Last Shift. The Last Shift was from I think like 2014, 2016, but basically this is a complete remake, a new vision on the movie. The story that I heard on why this got a remake kind of quickly was that I guess The Last Shift wasn't really made exactly how the director wanted it or the writer or whoever. So Malum is basically he has more money now, so he's like, okay, let's actually make this right. And it was good. It was obviously very, 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 very similar to The Last Shift, so you could almost just not watch this movie if you've seen The Last Shift. But it was still, I think, worth a watch just because it had some new, some new characters, a couple new twists. So if you've never seen The Last Shift, just watch Malum. If you've seen The Last Shift, give Malum a try. But yeah, I think that's the two major ones that I watched recently.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that I really watched was I did watch the Chucky season 3 episode 1,
Nice.
and it was fun. It was good. I liked it. I liked, like I said, it's no secret that they're in the White House now, uh, and so, but it's very good, right? I enjoy the Chucky series a lot. I like how the Child's Play series, good and bad. The one thing that it absolutely does that I enjoy is that it never discards any of its history, right? It whether it is, again, well received or not, it accepts its past, it accepts the movies it's done as part of the canon, and it uses the high points the best it can, and I appreciate that. And the series is really, has so far been really good about doing that, right? Picking and choosing, tying lots of things from the past together, lots of the good points, and it's enjoyable, right? It's well cast and it's well acted, and again, I enjoyed the first episode, so hopefully that continues on through season 3. Yeah, like I said, I'm a fan of the series, so let's hope they don't ruin that for me. But you never know. But so far so good. One episode, and I'm like, yeah, let's go. Um, but okay, well, lost my train of thought there. So we're moving on to our weekly segment, and this week we have Ike coming at us again with another horror hot take. Horror hot take. All right. So if for you, those of you who may not be familiar with us, maybe you're a new listener, and if you are, welcome. Uh, we have a revolving door of segments that we do every episode, and we're gonna probably come up with some different ones and mix some things in to try to keep it fresh. But one of the segments we do on a regular basis is called Horror Hot Take, and it's open for either of us, but it's typically Ike, because Ike he has a lot of these queued up, ready to go to talk about, and it's where he discusses something that could be triggering, so to speak, for certain horror fans, and it is a quote unquote hot take, where it is a thing where, so, it's a strong opinion that could cause people to either strongly agree or disagree. So, Ike, do you have one in mind, and are you ready to dive into it?
Yep, absolutely am.
All right, go for it.
All right. So I've talked a lot about on here about how, there are some movies from the 80s and 90s and 70s that age better than other movies. Some movies that are in the modern age better than some of the original movies. And I even have specifically talked about how I prefer movies like The Conjuring compared to that of like The Exorcist. Now, this hot take was actually specifically prompted by my rewatching of the Exorcist movie and then watching The Exorcist Believer. And my hot take essentially revolves around the fact that there are simply some old movies that have not aged well, and there are some old movies that, for lack of a better phrase, are simply not as good as their remakes or their requels, if you will. And I think it's about time that we all just kind of accept that there are just some really poorly paced horror movies from the 80s and 90s that are beloved, but are simply just not as good visually as these more modern movies. And while I understand that visuals are not everything, it's a lot of it, especially with horror movies. We rewatched The Exorcist, and I just realized how how dog shit the pace is in that movie. No offense to any Exorcist lovers out there, but it was not as good as my other rewatches of the film, and I was sitting there, I was watching, I'm like, man, this movie is just dragging ass. Like I was like, why is it dragging? I don't remember it being this slow. And I guess maybe it was just, as I maybe if I get older, I just kind of refine my taste a little more. But man, it was just I watched that movie, and I watched another movie not too long ago. I was rewatching the Friday the 13th movies, is what it was, and I was just like, man, some of these really early ones are just not good. I mean, they're okay as slashers, you know what I mean? It's okay to have fun with them, but man, like these early movies, their pacing's really weird. The stories, it's kind of there, but like it's just I don't know. I guess the hot take is that specifically, I think it's time that we just accept that it's okay to say that these newer remakes are better than their predecessors. You'd be hard pressed to find a movie franchise that doesn't fit that mold, except for maybe like I don't know, Nightmare on Elm Street, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that at all. But that is your opinion. That is your hot take. But like I said, yeah, I don't agree. I don't agree. I love The Exorcist. I don't think it's flawed. I like it as it is, and again, I'm sure this is triggered by, I guess, thinking that you probably like The Exorcist Believer better than the original Exorcist. I do not. Um, it's not even close in my eyes. I think The Exorcist is in a world of its own. But I feel that way, I think, for most franchises. While there are, some remakes, requels, whatever you want to call, whatever they are, that are good, that are worthy, that are okay and stand on their own and whatever. I don't know that in my opinion, that any of them necessarily even still size up to the originals, even if they are really, really good. So, but again, as in our reviews, as in a lot of what we discuss, and what discussions of this nature, it's just opinion. It is what it is. People like what they like. And I do think that something could be said, for the age and the generational thing too, right? I mean, there's, whatever, 20 years difference between you and I. And, I grew up watching The Exorcist in those movies. So, I'm a little, they're, a little partial to them, right? So not that I don't appreciate the new, but, growing up on the originals, I probably see them in a different aspect.
Very
Whether
true.
that, and the same with, the same could be said with you, right? Seeing the new ones as your takes on them and your generation's, quote unquote, entries into these franchises. Those are what's special to you, right? To you. And, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's fine. Right. And, I don't understand people that get too hung up on it, because and I've made this comparison a lot to Star Wars fans, right?
Mm.
Uh, I will never in any time in my life ever say that anything Star Wars has done can hold a candle to the original trilogy. It's not that I don't enjoy some of the other stuff. I enjoy most of the other stuff, varying degrees, right? But I do understand that there's a generation that the prequels that's their Star Wars, right? That's what they were kids with. And the same things that me as a child going and seeing Empire and Jedi and having that merchandise and feeling that, that's the same thing with other people and the prequels and other people and the sequels. And I get that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And those people can say that they like those better. That's fine, right? What I don't get is when people get so hung up on it. It's like, if somebody likes something better than the other, it doesn't diminish what I like,
Right.
right? I mean, you saying that doesn't just diminish the fact that how much I love the original Exorcist. It doesn't. It's not like there has to be a balance, right? That if there's only so much love to go around for these things, so and it's whatever. This this stuff is a lot. It's a lot more fun if people can just be respectful and have these discussions. And the biggest miss in any of this stuff is people want to state that opinions are facts, and it's not, right. Saying yes, there are certain things that you can absolutely say about certain movies that are factual, that can stand out, right? You can say that certain effects in certain movies are a higher quality, whatever, of others, and some of that's provable. But when you speak about enjoyment value, that's not factual. And so I hate when people get so hung up on it that they're like they get angry about it. I'm like, why the fuck? It's like, do you get producing credit on these movies? Are you getting a kickback? Why are you? I mean, I understand being passionate, and I understand being invested because I am, and I will argue and get fired up about stuff. But when push come to shove, it's just an opinion.
Right.
So
yeah, and I do want to clarify. My hot takes are entirely just opinions that I have. These are just things that come to my mind. So when I especially for people who maybe aren't familiar with like my hot takes and kind of our back and forth, I'm like Dave said, we have about a 20-year gap between us. So sometimes my hot takes are going to definitely differ from sort of like the traditional role that a lot of people have with with the movies and stuff. So it's just important to keep that in mind because I could I don't want anybody to think that I don't like The Exorcist because I do genuinely like The Exorcist movie. It's just there's that different glass or lens that I look through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, and the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter if you like it or not. It really does not, because you're entitled to that, right? And that's what I don't. That's what. And again, it wasn't directed directly at you. I'm just saying, in a general sense, people are going to like different things based on their taste, based on their age, based on the time period, based on experience, life situations, the mood they were in when they went. There's all kinds of factors, and a person can have a favorite movie. And I can hate that movie and think it is absolutely trash. But that doesn't, my opinion does not trump their opinion. Right. It doesn't mean because I hate the movie that it's right or wrong. You cannot, there is no definitive way to sit there and say one movie, as far as enjoyment value, one movie's better than another. There's no way of proving that as far as enjoyment because it differs. Now, you want to say, box office or blah, 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 or the money it made. The rankings for the weekend, there's different things like that if you want to get down to it. But just as far as enjoyment, you can't state one is a better movie than another based on the intangibles because it differs for each person and their approach. So, and again, this is one of those things that we often get off on tangents and get rambling about, with gatekeeping and this and that. And it just drives me nuts that, you know what? If somebody came up to me and literally, I don't know, whatever, said Cabin Fever was their favorite horror movie of all time, I'd be like, okay, that's cool. I fucking hate that movie. But if that is somebody's favorite movie, okay, that's great. You know what? I love Reanimator. I can very much see how someone can watch that movie and say, what the fuck is this shit? I get that. I understand that. But I do love it. So it's just an opinion. And I'm not saying one is a technically better movie than the other and blah, 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 because neither one of them are Academy Award winning. So it doesn't really matter. So I just think people need to be a little kinder and choose a few less hills to die on. Because when you, in the grand scheme of things, we're all in the same team here. Yeah. And just because we're playing different positions, that doesn't matter. We're all horror fans. And just because you like a certain movie better than I do, and I like this, that doesn't make any difference. we're still in the, still fans of the same genre. So that's my 2 minutes. So be it. So all I'm saying is give peace a chance. That's all I'm saying. So let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll have news, birthdays, anniversaries, and all that fun stuff. So stick around. Make sure you subscribe to listen to their screams on your favorite podcast platform. Also, make sure you look us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, TikTok, and Slasher. All you have to do is look up Listen to Screams. That is Listen, the number 2 in Screams, and you can find us there. Also, make sure you go and buy yourself a Listen to Their Screams t-shirt. You can find all of our shirts at tinyurl.com/Screams Shirts.
Spread the news. Spread the news. Spread the news. And we are back with some news. All right. So, we got some cool news. We have a lot of movie anniversaries, which I'm not super surprised. It is October.
Yes.
But a couple of news release here. Damien Leone has promised fans that Terrifier 3 teaser that will show at the end of Terrifier 2's theatrical release on November 1st is a full trailer that is over 2 minutes long. Now, unfortunately, I will miss out on this re-release because I will be on a cruise ship on November 1st. So as excited as I was to see the re-release of Terrifier 2, I unfortunately will have to pass on it. Which, you know, it is what it is. I'm a little bummed, so hopefully somebody will leak it online.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, this is a limited thing, right? It's only like
Right.
supposedly a 3 day thing, whatever it is. So hopefully pretty quickly, whatever this trailer is will get released online in official capacity from Leon and whatever, the production company. Hopefully they put it out there. And I venture to guess they will. I wouldn't know why they wouldn't. Well, they're going to give, the people that go to see this the first crack. When it's all said and done and this run is done, I mean, you would think they'd want to put it out there for the rest of the world to see because they want as many eyes on it as they can. So,
Absolutely. Hopefully, hopefully it gets online somewhere because, like I said, I'm very curious to see what Terrifier 3 will hold. I'm very curious to see who they're bringing back and whatnot. And, Kayla and I were actually talking the other day. I'm painfully curious, because Damien Leone has said that, this is going to be a more serious entry to the franchise. A little less, comedic as the first, because the first one had a little bit of that kind of goofiness to it. And the second one did too, but it leaned a little more into like the violence and sort of the supernatural aspect. And Damien had said that the third one is going to kind of pull back on both of those and be a little bit more of a serious entry. So very curious to see how that goes. So we'll see. But on another note, Guillermo del Toro has stated that he starts shooting his take on Frankenstein in February. The cast is including Christoph Waltz, Mia Goth, Oscar Isaac, and Andrew Garfield. I am, again, painfully curious to see how this comes out because, Dave loves his version of Frankenstein from, way back in the day. It's a fantastic movie. Has a lot of relevance in today's modern horror. If you're interested in our take on that, we've talked about its similarities to a certain entry into the Friday the 13th franchise. But I'm very curious to see Del Toro's version of Frankenstein. I think it'll be very good.
yeah, I do too. And the thing is, I know lots of people have done Frankenstein takes and this and that, but I don't think outside the original, that there's too many people that have nailed it very well.
Yeah.
This is definitely a story in a movie that is due for a really, really, really good modern take on it, right? Because we're not talking about remaking a movie from, 2000. We're talking about a movie that's damn near 100 years old.
Yeah.
and a story that's even longer. And while I think the original film is absolutely perfect, it's still, this movie is crying for a solid, top-notch remake that is not, hey, let's put a modern spin on it, because it doesn't need that, right? Let's don't do that. Let's be respectful of the time period and the piece and everything. And Guillermo del Toro is the guy to do it because he loves Frankenstein. He says this is a movie he's been wanting to make for 50 years, ever since he's been involved, his whole life. He's wanting to make this movie. The cast is unbelievable, and he does amazing work. So I think this one is going to be absolutely spectacular, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that pretty much does it for news. We're going to move on to birthdays and upcoming anniversaries, but I do want to slip one non-horror little tidbit in there. A trailer has been released for the Von Erich family biopic type movie called The Iron Claw. and Dave actually sent it to me this morning. So for people who don't know, Dave and I are also huge wrestling fans. I am a huge fan of the Von Erich family. I just have a kind of like a weird thing, like where I love just their wrestling, I love their matches, but I also love their history. So I'm very excited to see this movie. It comes out in December. Actually, I have a day off on the 2nd of January, so I'll be able to see it then. But I just want to throw that out there in case anybody else was intrigued by it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good. Again, it's a Hollywood take. It's not going to be 100% historically factual, I'm sure. But just from the trailer, you know, the costuming, the clothing, the design, the look of the guys, the look of the sportatorium, which is the arena they wrestle in, that's all pretty good. So at least they got that part right. And you know, anything that is a quote unquote biographical thing, there's still Hollywood liberties taken. So there's always going to be some of that. But I'm excited because, again, you know, when anything wrestling crosses over and you get a main theatrical release or whatever for something that's wrestling related, I'm a happy guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited. But I just had to throw it out there because, you know, it may not be horror, but there are definitely some very horrifying aspects of their story. So I'm very interested to see how they'll do it.
There's a lot of crossover. I know not everybody, but there's a lot of crossover in the fan base with horror and wrestling.
Very true. Very true. Especially if you've seen the Texas Chainsaw match on AEW. So scary. So scarily awful. But anyways.
Yep.
Upcoming birthdays. We only have 2 this week. October 13th, 1956, we have Chris Carter, the X-Files creator. The X-Files, of course, is probably one of the greatest television shows of all time. A lot of it is aged, but I will say this, a lot of the stories are so good, and even though they are a little bit older, X-Files is great. You can't beat the spookiness of X-Files. You cannot beat the ambience of X-Files. It's just chef's kiss, so good.
It is. I love X-Files. Definitely a top 5 show for me of all time.
Absolutely. And then we also have Margot Kidder, the original Black Christmas, and Lois Lane in the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. I can visualize her as Lois Lane. I cannot visualize her in Black Christmas for some reason, but obviously a fantastic actress. The Christopher Reeves Superman movies are wonderful. You know, just very iconic for the time, and Margot Kidder definitely did her part in making that iconic.
She did. She's great. I love her. In the original Black Christmas is spectacular, and she's kind of the main person in it, the main girl at the whatever that is, the college or whatever. And yeah, I love her. I mean, she will forever be my Lois Lane. So
very, very, very cool. And then we also have some upcoming movie anniversaries. Like I said, we have a lot. So
yeah, I just couldn't trim this list. I'm like, yeah, these are a lot, but I'm like, where do you cut? But then I thought, you know, and then Monica even mentioned to me, hey, it's October, right? You're going to get a lot in October. So, but,
very true.
I felt like these were all notable enough that we had to speak on them.
Yeah. So starting us out at the top, October 12th, 1989, we have Puppet Master. There's a billion Puppet Master movies. A lot of them are not that great, but the first few are really good. The first one is very good. Definitely makes you rethink the buying a puppet thing.
Yeah, you don't have to make me rethink. I don't like puppets. And I don't like whatever they're called, ventriloquist dummies. None of that stuff. I don't like any of it, but yeah, Puppet Master's fun. I like the original a lot.
Absolutely. All right. Then we also have one of my low-key favorite Halloween movies, October 13th, 1989, Halloween 5, Revenge of Michael Myers. Yeah, Revenge of Michael Myers and Curse of Michael Myers are again, low-key favorite movies of mine. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they just kind of are a little unique in some way. Revenge of Michael Myers is a little campy, but nonetheless a good one. It's a sequel to the Halloween 4 Return of Michael Myers. Dave, what are your thoughts on Halloween 5?
Not one of my favorites, but but again, I like all the Halloweens in varying degrees, right? It's one of those things where even the ones that are quote unquote bad, I appreciate in some way. I mean, even the one, whatever Halloween Ends that we knock, I mean, there's still parts that I appreciate and that I like because it's Halloween and it's still got Michael Myers. And I just love the franchise so much that while ranking them, which we will do this fall when it comes close to the around time for the 45th anniversary of the original movie. I wouldn't necessarily rank even the ones I rank at the bottom. I probably still enjoy overall as a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like how it is for most of those franchises. Though. Some of those middle movies, they're not the best, but they're not the worst. They're still enjoyable. But October 14th, 1988, we have Pumpkinhead, a movie that I've not seen in a good long while.
Yeah.
Pumpkinhead's a classic monster flick. You know what I mean? It's from the 80s, and it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
No, I like Pumpkinhead. Again, I haven't watched it in a while either, but it's a fun movie. It's goofy. It's definitely an 80s horror, whatever prototypical 80s horror movie. But it's a fun movie. Again, there's been some sequels and whatever else that I don't think are quite as good, but yeah, the original is fun.
Yes, absolutely. And then we also have October 14th, 1994, a movie that ranked relatively high on our list, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. New Nightmare was a breath of fresh air into the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise after a slew of not-so-great movies. New Nightmare is a good one, gotta say it.
It is. It's one of those deals where people need to take note of how do you want to invigorate a franchise, do something different, and do it right? Not just do the same old tire over and over again, because at some point, even if it's great, at some point you have to do something different. And this is the way. I mean, this is the way to do it. That's fun. And when especially when you break that fourth wall and you blur the lines, quote unquote, between reality and movie, which not truly, but within the realm of the movie, it's fun. And I love New Nightmare. It's one of my favorites.
Absolutely. Definitely high on my list, too. That's for sure. All right. October 16th, 1992, we have Candyman. Obviously, Candyman's great. The remake of Candyman, the requel, or whatever you want to call it, superb as well. But the original Candyman with Tony Todd, so good. Love that guy. Love that movie.
Absolutely. So good. I mean, again, it's classic. So good. Monica and I went to a convention one time, and Tony Todd was there, and we weren't going to see him or anything, but we were walking by, and he was there, and it wigged Monica out just because she could hear him talk, and it just creeped her out, just purely based on Candyman.
Very much so. He's got a very iconic voice. I think it's one of those things you hear and you're just like, yep, I know who that guy is. And then on a not so good note, October 16, 1998, Bride of Chucky. It's not the worst. The later movies are even worse. But Bride of Chucky is not the best, but not the worst. It's definitely middle of the road. But it's not horrible. I would watch it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great movie, but it has some great aspects as far as the Child's Play franchise, right? Bringing in, Jennifer Tilly and different things, and the Tiffany doll and whatnot. So there's some aspects that have stood as iconic within the Child's Play franchise. But overall, as a movie, like you said, it's kind of lukewarm to me.
Yeah, I would say lukewarm is a good descriptor. All right, October 17, 1997, I Know What You Did Last Summer. I Know What You Did Last Summer is a pretty atypical slasher. It does change up the genre slightly on kind of how they approach it. And it has some relatively big names, especially for the time. Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Freddie Prinze Jr., so on and so forth. Johnny Galecki's in it. Not a bad movie. I heard that the television series that they have on Prime isn't too bad either.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not watched it. I haven't watched this movie in a while, but I do know as far as 90s horror, it's up there. It's one of the more recognizable, or whatever you want to call it, iconic of the 90s horror. And I think it holds up as far as what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, long list here, guys. We're almost done. October 18th, 1980, Motel Hell.
Hell yeah!
I've never seen Motel Hell. I think we talked about it before, too.
Put it on the list, Ike, because this movie is great. This movie is, holy crap. As far as 80s horror, Motel Hell is iconic. Okay, so you've got to put it on the list. Put it on the Dave list, because you've got to watch Motel Hell. Take it with the fact that it's made in 1980 when you watch it. I mean, take that into account. I love Motel Hell. This is unreal. You've got to watch it. So put it on that list. Put it on that Dave watch list.
I got it on there.
There
No
you go.
problem. And another one that's on my watch list, October 18th, 1985, Reanimator.
Yeah. If you don't watch it soon, we're going to quit talking. I'm just telling you. Because this movie, again, like I said earlier, I am not going to fool anybody and say this is one of the greatest movies of all time, but it is so fun. It's just, it's iconic. I mean, we're talking about an H.P. Lovecraft story. It is amazing. It is incredible. One of my favorite movies of all time.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, I'll have to check it out. It is on my list. And then last but certainly not least, we have October 18th, 2002, The Ring. Again, early 2000s horror is a little hit or miss, but The Ring, it's a fantastic movie. It's a good franchise. It's an American remake of a foreign horror called Ringu, which I believe is Japanese, I believe. But yeah, definitely a good one. If you've never seen it, it's definitely a good early 2000s horror movie. That's a for sure statement.
Yeah, it's a standout. Again, when you talk, right, eras of horror, right, and decades of horror. I mean, when you talk about the early 2000s, The Ring's up there to me, right? It's a fresh take. It's something new, right? We hadn't seen really a whole lot like this with this approach. So it's a creative story. Again, I know it's a remake, but still, it's a fun movie, and it's one of those movies that even at this point rewatching it, again, I still think it holds up for the time period.
Absolutely. And then I think that's all of our upcoming movie anniversaries. So check out all those anniversary movies this week, and we got some releases coming for you. On October 12th, we have Fall of the House of Usher. It is a Netflix Mike Flanagan collaboration. Mike Flanagan does a lot of that with Netflix, and this is a series based on the tales of Edgar Allan Poe. Fall of the House of Usher is definitely going to be one I'll be catching. I love Mike Flanagan. I love Edgar Allan Poe, so it's a perfect mix for me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to watch this. Again, I think this is the final obligation that Mike Flanagan currently has with Netflix, and you can't go out with better than this, right? Edgar Allan Poe stuff, it works. It is easy to remake and put a spin on it. It's timeless. Right, you can literally adapt it to any time and make it work. I'm pretty psyched. I'm hoping it has the same feel and creativity when Guillermo del Toro's that Cabinet of Curiosities that he did. I'm hoping it has that same vibe, but it's just being Edgar Allan Poe, and I think it will. And I can't wait to watch it.
Absolutely. And then we also have Creepshow Season 4 releasing on the 13th. Creepshow has, again, this is the 4th season on Shudder. Creepshow, the first few seasons are really good. Season 3, I've actually not watched yet. But season 1 and 2 are spectacular. Creepshow is, of course, an anthology-esque series where each episode is different. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. Season 4 is coming very, very soon. Dave, I'm sure you've seen the original Creepshow, but have you watched the show at all?
I have not, unfortunately, and I'm kind of disappointed with myself that I haven't, because I love Creepshow, and I'm very happy that it's that whatever that franchise or that name or whatever you want to say is still alive and out there, because it's that same, like you said, the anthology thing, kind of that Tales from the Crypt kind of thing, spawning out of Stephen King, and I'm glad it's still alive and well, and I'm excited. I'm glad this has gone 4 seasons, and hopefully it keeps on a few more.
Yes. Absolutely. I suspect it will. It does pretty well, I hear, so. But we'll see. All right. October 13th as well, we have The Puppet Man releasing on Shudder. It is described as The Puppet Man, a convicted killer on death row, always maintained his innocence, and that it was an evil force controlling his body as he slaughtered his victims. Now Michelle, the killer's daughter, begins to suspect that there may be some truth to her father's claims, when those around her begin to die in brutal ways. You know that I'm always on board for a Shudder release. This sounds pretty solid, so I will definitely be checking this out. Like I said, if it's on Shudder, I'm probably going to watch it.
Yep, me too. pretty much anything, that Screambox Shutter throws out there, the original stuff, I'm watching. Some I like, some whatever, but some really stands out to me. And there's some sleeper stuff that slides in there, like last year with Deadstream, right? It really slid in there for us as one of our top 5 favorites of the year. And I'm not saying Puppet Man will be one of those, but I will definitely watch it. But on a side note, talking back to our earlier discussion, as it stands right now, Totally Killer may be that sleeper pick to slide in our top 5 for the year. So I know that's off track, but I'll watch Puppet Man. Yes.
Yes, I will watch Puppet Man, and you are correct. Totally Killer may have slipped in there for me too, but we'll talk about that here in about 2 months ish.
Yeah, we'll get
2.5 months. But very cool. And then last but not least, on the 17th, before we talk to you next, the 17th, that's a very weird day to release a movie. It's like a Wednesday or something. Anyways, we have Shaky Shivers. You heard that right. Shiver Me Timbers and Shaky Shivers being released on Screambox on the 17th, described as 2 young women find themselves at an abandoned camp in the woods with a book of magic spells surrounded by classic monsters in this comedic send-up of 80s horror films. Again, it's on Screambox. It's a little comedic from what I'm reading here, so I'll definitely be checking that out.
Yeah, me too. There is absolutely nothing about that description that does not just make me excited. I mean, everything about me. You abandoned camp in the woods, a book of magical spells, surrounded by classic monsters, a comedic send-up of 80s horror films. Yeah, all that. Throw it in a pot, and you have Dave's wish list right there. I know this has been out there. I think it had a limited theatrical release. Got a lot of praise, and this is the streaming release of it. It's coming to Screambox, so I'm pretty excited to finally get to watch it.
Yep, absolutely. I just love the name, Shaky Shivers. All right. Anyways, so that's it, guys. That's it, legit, for real. I'm starting to lose my voice talking about all that. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna say it once. I've said it a million times. If you don't follow us on social media, you're a fucking loser. Anyways,
Absolutely.
Coming up next, we're gonna do our review, which I think might be a little divisive between Dave and I, but we're gonna do our review of Exorcist Believer.
Listen to Their Screams is now a Fangoria collaborator. Get 20% off your order at shop.fangoria.com by using the promo code LISTEN2SCREAMS at checkout. That is listen, the number 2, and screams. Or you can click the link in the show notes. All right, we are back here on Listen to Their Screams, and like I said, we're now about to discuss The Exorcist Believer, which is out in theaters now. The movie was written by David Gordon Green and Peter Sattler, directed by David Gordon Green, starring Ellen Burstyn, Leslie Odom Jr., Lydia Jewett, and Olivia O'Neill. It was released by Universal Pictures. Had a budget of $30 million and so far has grossed $26,497,600, which was good for number 1 for the weekend. Now, you had to put a little caveat on that because I do believe that Universal did have to pay like $100 million just for the rights for this movie, but they are getting a trilogy out of it, so whatever. Long term, who knows where it'll be. Now, here's the thing. Ike, you say that it's this might be divisive. I don't know that it's going to be as divisive as you think, because the only part that will be divisive is, do I think Exorcist Believer is better than the original Exorcist? Nope, not even close. But for me, probably nothing will be. But here's the thing. Like I said earlier, for whatever reason, online and reviews and blah, 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 this movie is getting raked over the coals.
It really is.
Yeah, people are talking about how much they hate it, how horrible it is, how much it drags, and blah, 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 blah. And I keep hearing this, right? And I keep thinking, Kate, what am I not seeing that they're seeing that? And then the bad thing is, it's hard not to get pulled into that and start second guessing yourself. And I have to stick to my guns. And the fact of the matter is, do I think Exorcist Believer is a absolutely 100% spectacular, top shelf movie? Nah, not quite. Do I think Exorcist Believer is a fun movie and not nearly as goddamn bad as what people are saying? Yes, 100%. Does Exorcist Believer suck? I don't think so. I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was fun. I thought it had flaws, right? But most movies do. But I'm not I'm not understanding the hate to the level that it's getting. I understand if people do not like it. Okay, I get that, right? Because you get that with every movie. But man, people are really coming hard at this movie.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that level. It's not registering with me. And maybe maybe I'll get some heat for saying that. But okay, let me discuss number one. Let me discuss some of the things I liked. Right, it was a well-made movie. The guy that played the dad, which I think is Leslie Odom Jr., 100% spectacular. He was the star of this movie. He was so damn good, and the two girls were excellent. Right, I like how it tied back to the original, and but it did its own thing too. Right, it was a I don't want to say unique because it's not necessarily that it's unique in its take on a demon possession,
Right.
but it wasn't the same old. We talked about this not too long ago with something. I don't remember what it was, but and I'm not knocking. I love Pope's Exorcist, but it's not that same old Catholic Church possession. Bring in someone from the church. While there were clergy in this, it was different, right? That was not the predominant thing. And I guess I kind of liked that take on the parents saying, fuck this, we got to do something and save our kids.
Yeah.
And so they all came together and they brought different, whatever, a priest and a preacher and whatnot together. And the person who has experience in this, whatever they could do, let's throw everything at this and see if we can come through it. I don't know. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I don't think it has the holes that everybody keeps saying. I don't get that. Now, my flaws to it is as a horror movie, I think it could use a little more horror, right? A little more. I'm not saying it has to have kills or whatever, but a little bit more suspense, a little more, not suspense, but a little more scare, right? When it did it, it was okay, but I thought it needed a little more. And I don't know if that's why people are saying it drags, is because it did. I don't think drag's not the right word, because still characterly, developing the character still was good, I thought. But it could have used a little more terror, right? A little more demon in your face here and there. Throw a little more of that in there, a little more scary. It had some, but yeah, I think it needed a little more of that. But I don't think that necessarily makes what was there a flaw, because it was still good. I just think it needed a little more make me shit my pants kind of stuff. And again, before I pass it off to you, and again, we say it, the spoilers, blah, blah, blah. Freaking seeing Linda Blair at the end of the movie. Oh, I loved it, right? I know it's cheesy. I know everybody knew it was coming. I think it was obvious watching the movie, but just to see her, I love Linda Blair, and it made me so happy to see her in the movie for that moment. So, so I'm gonna pass it off, Ike, and let you talk now on it a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, like you said, I just genuinely, it befuddles me how much hate this movie's getting online. Like, here's the thing: there are definitely movies that are more deserving of critiques and criticisms, but like genuinely, I see these takes on this movie online, and I genuinely don't understand what movie they watched. And that very rarely happens, where I read a review and I can at least see where they're coming from, but I just simply cannot visualize and see where these reviews are coming from. And obviously I mean this respectfully. The only thing that I could possibly think, that is spawning this much hate is that there are a lot of people who may be blinded by nostalgia and cannot see past the old formula to see this new formula. And I think that could be part of the issue. I think another part of the issue is that a lot of people just genuinely hate requels. There are a lot of people who just genuinely look down on reused, rehashed material. So that's my only thought process on why this is getting so much hate. But I digress. The movie itself is fantastic. There's a lot of amazing stuff that happens in this movie, a lot of homages to the original Exorcist. Now, obviously, this was made by, David Gordon Green, who had a lot of experience with this kind of movie. You know what I mean? He worked on the Halloween requels, which to be fair,
David Gordon Green gets a lot of heat.
Yeah,
He gets a lot of shit. So I don't know if some of this is just not because he's tied to it.
I guarantee it, because his involvement with the other movies, I think, is a large reason probably why people gave this movie shit, because they're like, oh, what the fuck is this guy doing? You know what I mean? And David Gordon Green, he did great. This movie was directed fabulously. I mean, and I think you kind of mentioned it. Leslie Odom Jr. was so fucking good in this movie. I mean, just peak. And the girls in this movie too, the children, they did fantastic. So, and I wanted to give a small special kudos because Catherine, which is the more religious girl family, is played by Olivia O'Neill. I look on IMDb and this is her only credit. So for this to be her one and only movie so far, it's fantastic. I would not have guessed that this was her only movie. And obviously everyone else in this movie was so fantastic too. Small spoiler, one of the things that I really enjoyed about this movie was that in the end, obviously, you watch the trailer, the girls become possessed. And one of the things in the trailer that was kind of striking is that the demon says through them, only one of these girls is going to live. And that literally comes true in this movie. Only one of the girls live. A lot of times in these movies, they do those fake outs, right? Those fake outs where like, oh yeah, we're going to kill somebody. And then they don't actually kill anybody. Well, they killed one of them. They killed one of the girls, and I was not expecting that. And just that absolute unexpected like twist where I was like, wow, I really was not anticipating anybody dying. And not only that, this movie just not to say that it reinvented the wheel, but it did sort of reinvent sort of that exorcism esque thought process. You know what I mean? It wasn't just the standard young and an old priest walk into a bar. It was, we're going to approach this from multiple different fronts. You know what I mean? It had sort of like that holistic sort of, I cannot remember, what religion she kind of subscribed to, but it was more of a holistic sort of medicine woman who was approaching this from a natural perspective. You know what I mean? That nature needs to be involved in order to, rid these girls of their spirits. And of course you did have the Christian Catholic, perspective as well being represented. But it was just very intriguing how they approached the exorcism as sort of a non-traditional format. And they also kind of, it was more realistic. You know what I mean? They said that the Vatican wouldn't approve the exorcism because the Vatican didn't want anything to do with it. The Vatican was like, no, this is a mental health matter, not an exorcism matter. And there was a scene at the end which I thought was very interesting that I think is going to be important in the next movie. Is that Catherine was taken. You know what I mean? The demon chose Catherine, and I think it's important that be noted because I think it's going to be important in the next movie somehow. And it was just the movie had a lot of really cool little snippets, a lot of ties back into the original film. Ellen Burstyn looks fantastic for being a 90-year-old woman. Mm-hmm. She still moves around perfect, and she did a really good job in this movie. I was really thinking they were going to kill her, but they didn't. And I'm glad they didn't because we got to see that really cool, touching reunion between Chris McNeil's character and Reagan's character. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, this movie had a lot of great stuff. It had fan service for the old fans of The Exorcist. It had a lot of new stuff, a lot of new actors, new faces, and a very different twist on sort of how The Exorcism traditionally goes. So, yeah, I loved it. A lot of great stuff I could say about it. And yeah, I can't wait for Deceiver, Exorcist Deceiver. I think it's going to be really good.
Yeah. Again, I don't think it's absolutely a perfect movie. And I don't know that it's one of my, it's not cracking my top 5 or anything for the year, but I think there's always going to be people that hate and that no matter what the movie is, right? There's always people that express that. But yeah, there's so much out there. I don't get it. I don't know. And I love the original, but I can still appreciate this. And again, while it does have some flaws, right? But most movies do, right? There's always something missing about movies. I don't know. I thought it was a fun movie. I thought it was enjoyable to watch overall. And again, the only qualm I really have is I wish they would have had a little more, I don't even know the right word to put on it, like a little more action or whatever it might be. And by action, I just mean I would like to have seen a little more of the demon, right? A little more in your face, a little more some more scares, because the stuff when they showed it, it was really good, and and there was a lot of character development and whatnot, and that was all really good, and the story was really good in my eyes, but um, yeah, I could have used a little more, and I don't know how they could have balanced and what they could have taken out to put more of that in. I don't know,
Right.
but I wanted to see a little more the demon in my face kind of stuff.
Right.
And I wish there could have been a little more of that. And again, I think you also have to keep in mind this movie is establishing a new trilogy,
Yeah.
and sometimes that hinders that first movie. And now that they've established the characters, they've established the world and the premise and what's going on and the tie to the original, the tie back. Um, you know, maybe it's a little more wide open for the next one and the third one, and we'll see. So, but again, it was while I won't say it's a great movie, I don't see it being as bad as everybody's saying, and I thought it was a fun, enjoyable movie overall, and you know, so I don't know. Again, in my eyes, is it as good as the original? Nope, not for me. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they would do. I probably wouldn't see it as that because I love the original so much. But that doesn't mean this one's so bad. It doesn't have to be that one has to be good, one has to be bad. So I don't know. So anyway, Ike, you want to move on? You want to rate this thing?
Let's do it. Let's rate this bitch.
All right. Well, again, like I said, not what I would call a top shelf movie in my eyes, but solid enough for me. I think I'm just giving it right at the middle, just a 3 out of 5 for me because it was fun and I like it. I don't think there was, like I said, enough there to send it over the edge. If it had a little more scare, a little more of the demonic stuff, it might have pushed it a little, half a point, half a scream higher. But I definitely don't think there's anything there that, in my eyes, would have brought it below a 3. So I'm giving it a 3 out of 5.
Well, today's the day, folks. Dave and I have rated probably the last dozen movies pretty similarly. But today's the day. Today's the day that we go down our own separate ways. It's like the end of the Fast and Furious movie when Vin Diesel and Paul Walker drive down whatever that song's playing in the band. It's been a long day. Anyways, that's us right now. I'm giving this bad boy a 4 out of 5. And here's why. When I walked out of that movie, I said to myself, if The Exorcist were more like this movie, I probably would have liked The Exorcist maybe a little bit more. The Exorcist is a good movie. Historically speaking, it's a very important movie for the history of not just horror movies but paranormal movies. The Exorcist broke a lot of ground and it broke a lot of barriers when it came to not only paranormal movies but how children actors are seen in horror movies. So, The Exorcist is very important, but for me, The Exorcist never really did it. You know what I mean? When I watched it for the first time, yeah, it was definitely took me back a little bit. But as I've watched newer movies and as I've rewatched The Exorcist, this movie just seems to grow a little bit more for me in terms of how much I love it. And I feel like it did justice to the Exorcist franchise, and it made me really excited for the next 2 movies. So for me, it's a 4 out of 5. It is up there with some of the other movies that I've rated at a 4. And it genuinely makes me excited for what is going to come next, and I hope that they get the green light to get those next movies.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. So if you average them out, that's a 3.5 for us. So since we're not really going to do full reviews, but we really, really like them, do we want to give a rating for VHS 85 and Totally Killer?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, let's go for that. So let's start with VHS 85 again. I love the movie. Thought it was very, very fun. But I don't know that it's breaking new ground per se. I think it's just improving on the formula they've established. So I think VHS 85, I'm probably giving it a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah. I would have to agree with you there. It's always my instinct with these VHS movies and these anthology movies, oh yeah, it's a 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5. But VHS is a long-running series. This is not the first, and it won't be the last. 85 was definitely an improvement some of the other films, so I'd have to agree. 3.5 out of 5, not breaking any new ground, but fantastic nonetheless.
All right. Well, there you have it. So 3.5 out of 5 on VHS 85. Now, Totally Killer. Totally Killer again. So far, just off the top of my head, again, I'm not looking at the list and what we've watched and whatever else. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking this is a top 5 for me. I'm giving Totally Killer a 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you. Like I said, I feel like this is one of those sleeper movies, exactly like Deadstream was for us last year. Totally Killer, really, it blew away my preconceived notions of the film, my expectations. It's definitely a 4 out of 5 for me.
There you go. So a cumulative 3.5 out of 5 for Exorcist Believer, 3.5 out of 5 agreement on VHS 85, and a 4 out of 5 agreement on Totally Killer. So there you go. While we didn't do full reviews, there's our ratings and our opinions on those two. But again, I can't go watch them all. It was a good weekend to watch horror movies, and we're completing the quartet. Next week, we're going to be reviewing Pet Sematary Bloodlines. And out of these 4, this is the one I had the most trepidation about. I don't know what to expect. I've heard, well, I don't know. I've not heard a lot. I don't know that it's getting the eyes because of some of these other things.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing anything great about it, but we'll see. We'll see. It's got David Duchovny in it. I know it's kind of a prequel type take on I think a prequel of the remake, I believe, or however you want to put it. We'll see. I'm going to give it a chance. This is a streaming movie. I love the original Pet Sematary, so I'm hoping this is a good entry into the saga. But we'll give it a chance. So next episode, that's what we're reviewing, Pet Sematary Bloodlines. So make sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform so that you do not miss that episode. And like I said earlier, make sure you follow us on all the social media platforms so that you can see all the cool stuff we post. We post pretty much everything we talk about in the episodes and lots of other stuff. So there's lots of cool things and interactions and discussions and polls and things that we do out there. We try to have a fun, positive horror community and horror interaction with fellow fans. So make sure you follow us. So, Ike, before we close out and get out of here, anything else you want to add?
Only thing I can say is, there's so much stuff coming out, man. It's hard to keep up with all of it, but if you can, watch it all. Support horror. The more we watch, the more they make. So that's all I can say. Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, again, don't get caught up in what people are saying about the Exorcist Believer. Still go see it. Still go see it a chance, because if nothing else, those few bucks that you're giving it while seeing it just ensures that these companies are saying, well, horror movie is making us money. Horror movies are making us money, so we need to do more of them. So if you want to trash it online, whatever, but at least go see it, and don't just take other people's word for it, and formulate your own opinion. So, well, that's it for this week. That is our closure on Exorcist Believer, and like we said, next week we'll do Pet Sematary Bloodlines. But until then, wherever you go and whatever you do, be good, be safe, and have many pleasant nightmares.